ball with that. I want you to take your Bibles this morning, and I want you to turn to the book of Romans chapter 12. We're going to look at some stuff today because we've been talking about windows. And Pastor Richard and Pastor Sarah have done a great job with the whole windows theme. And actually, we've been talking about thus far is what do people see when they look through the windows of our lives at us? But this morning, I want to come at a little bit different angle with that today. Instead of looking at what other people see in me, I want to talk to us about what do we see through the windows of our lives. What do we see? How many of you have ever gone and toured a really old house? I'm talking like 100-year-old homes and that type of thing. And you see the glass, it was hand blown and different things. And that glass, what's unique about that glass is that it's wavy. And that wavy glass, it distorts the image when you look through it. It's a cool glass. I'd hate to have to replace that, but the reality is when you look through it, everything is distorted. And it's the reason for that is because as you're looking through it, light is bent so it hits things in different ways as it's coming through the glass, and it hits our eye, and we're wondering, why does it look so funky? It didn't look that way when I was outside looking at that tree, and now the tree, it looks straight. Now I'm looking at it, and it looks like it's doing one of these numbers. But you know, the reality is that windows help us to see things, right? They keep stuff out, bugs, bees. I hate bees. It helps us to see our world. And the reality here is this: we have to ask ourselves a question. That when we look through the windows of our lives at the world outside of us, what are we seeing? When we look through the windows of our hearts and our souls at the world, what do you see? Today I would share with you that I can just about guarantee that everybody in here, when you look through the world, through the windows of your life and through your eyes, sometimes what you see isn't really what's out there. Romans chapter 12, the Apostle Paul, I'm reading from the Message version, beginning in verse 9. He says these words. He says, love from the center of who you are. Don't fake it. Run for dear life from evil, Hold on for dear life for good. I like that. If you're going to run from evil for dear life, you better hold on to good stuff for good. That's good. Be good friends with and who love deeply. Practice playing second fiddle. Man, is that hard to do or what? Don't burn out. There's a word for you. Keep yourselves fueled and aflame. Be alert, servants of the master. Cheerfully be expectant. Don't quit in hard times. Pray all the harder. Help needy Christians. Be inventive in hospitality. There's one for you. Got to be inventive in hospitality. Bless your enemies. No cursing them under your breath. Laugh with your happy friends when they're happy. Share tears when they're down. Get along with each other. Don't be stuck up. Wow. Make friends with nobodies. I love this next one. Don't try to be the great somebody. Don't hit back. Discover beauty in everyone. If you've got it in you, get along with everybody. Don't insist on getting even. That's not for you to do. I'll do the judging, says the Lord. I'll do the judging, he says. I'll take care of it. Our scriptures tell us that if you see your enemy hungry, go buy that person lunch. Our scriptures once again tell us if he's thirsty, get him a drink. Your generosity will surprise him with goodness. Don't let evil get the best of you. Get the best of evil by doing good. I've been on a journey over the past 6 weeks through the book of Romans. I love the book to begin with, but God has been downloading stuff on me that is blowing my mind. I'm seeing stuff in a whole new way than what I've seen it before as I've read that book. And it's interesting that according to the Apostle Paul, there's only one debt that we have. There's only one debt that we have, and it's the debt of that we will always owe, and it's a debt of the get to place. It is never satisfied because it is a debt of continuing love. Can I tell you this morning, when we look through the windows at the world, we've got a choice of how we want to look at things. We have a choice of that we get to, or we have a choice of we have to. And I can tell you, just about everybody in this building, there are times when the view from your window isn't that great. And you're wondering, God, why am I having to go through this? Why am I having to deal with this issue? Why am I going there? What's going on with me? And the reality is, we want to say, well, it's other people. It's their fault. It's their issue. Why are they treating me this way? And can I just share with you very kindly and very gently, the issue isn't theirs, it's ours. We're the children of God. Many of them aren't. And we have to view that in a way, and we have to look at that in a way where we don't say, man, I have to do this, but I get to do this. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, how many of you guys in here, you grew up having to mow the lawn? Okay, some of you ladies may have too. You know, I can remember watching my dad mow the lawn. I don't want to be chauvinistic this morning, so yes, ladies, mow the lawn, please. I can remember growing up and watching my dad mow our yard. And man, I wanted to mow the lawn so bad. It was, Dad, can I mow the lawn? Dad, can I mow the grass? Dad, that was the dumbest thing I ever did. One day, I remember the day, he said, sure, son, you can mow the grass. I wondered why he was laughing as he walked away. Started that thing up, and man, I got to mow the grass. It was awesome. Brrr, walking around mowing the grass. Yes. The only thing was, all of a sudden, the get to about mowing the grass in my dad's eye became a have to in his mind. Because from that point forward, guess who had to mow the grass? And all of a sudden, what was an exciting get-to moment as however old I was, 10, 11 years old, turned into something that I had to do. And whenever your get-to turns into a have-to, it's no longer a joy, it's a chore. And you know what? And so many times when we're walking with the Lord, we're doing things with Him, we say, God, oh man, I would really love to get to do that. God, why don't you use me that way? God, would you open this door? And all of a sudden He does. And we get in the middle of that get to and we go, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? God, you think more highly of me than you should. And He keeps opening the same door, and all of a sudden, that get to turns into a have to. God, do I really have to go to church this morning? God, do I really have to do this? God, do I really have to do that? God, do I have to bring in food again this year? God, do I have to do all these things? And all of a sudden, those things that were so great and so encouraging to us become those things that seem to tie us up and bind us down. When we get up in the morning, what is the first question that pops into your head? For some of you, it's, I don't want to get up. Why do I have to get up? For some of you, what am I going to eat this morning? For some of you, Lord, do I have to deal with the kids again today? But let's face it, for most of us, we view our days through a lens of what do I have to do today? What do I have to do today? Oh Lord, why do they get to do this and that? We think about all this stuff with other people. Why do they get to do this? Why do they get to do that? God, how come I don't get to? I have to. And we run through those things, and instead of viewing our world through the eyes of I get to, we view our world through the eyes of I have to, and it changes everything, because as long as you see it as something you have to do, you'll never find the joy in it. You will never find the joy in it. So it's interesting. We want people to view us through the windows of our lives in a positive way, but we have to make sure that we're viewing them through the eyes of the Holy Spirit and seeing them through the windows that make it clear about, Lord, it's not, I don't have to deal with my neighbor today. I get to deal with my neighbor today. God, I don't have to deal with that person at work today. I get to deal with that person at work today. When we start asking, Lord, why do I have to? And they don't. Or, Lord, why do they get to do this and I don't? We are starting down a dangerous, slippery slope because we have just entered into the have to zone. Oh my. You see, that is not how God created us and called us to live. You see, when we choose to focus in hope, and it is a choice, how you view your world, how you view your neighbors, how you view your coworkers, how you view your kids, how you view anybody around, maybe even people here in the church. I know none of us have that kind of view because we're all perfect in here. Whenever we begin to view people from a standpoint of saying, I have to, we've started viewing our lives through a window that isn't what God has called us to do. When we choose to see the best in people and not the worst, we begin to walk in a get-to spirit. When we choose to focus in hope, we walk in a get-to spirit. You see, when we seize the moments of being able to help others that aren't able to help themselves, instead of thinking, not again, we walk in a get-to spirit. You see, as Pastor Sarah was bringing about, once again, we're doing Operation Christmas Child. We have the opportunity to sponsor children that do not have the ability financially to have a good Christmas. We get to do that for them. With the Lighthouse Thanksgiving food drive, we get to bring in food for people that are less fortunate than we are, that don't have the ability, that many of them wouldn't have a Thanksgiving dinner unless somebody steps up to the plate and says, we get to do that. In fact, we're starting today, we're taking in, where we help fund and we help work with the Crisis Care Pregnancy Center. We have the opportunity to do that. And I've heard this before, people say, and let me, not in this place. I'm serious, I have not heard it. But I've heard other people that are Christians say things like, why should we do that? They're the ones that got themselves in that predicament. Let them get themselves out. Why do we have to? Why do we have to give money to missions? Why do we have to pay for a church to be built in some land that we're never going to get to? Can I tell you that when you walk in that have to place, you have just squeezed off the blessing of the Lord in your own life. See, that's not how God created us to live. He didn't create us to be that way. He didn't create us to think about those things that way. He wants us to move in a place where we no longer look at something as have to. Can you imagine if Jesus, when he went to the cross, if he would have said, Father, really, I have to do this? But I seem to remember that in the Garden of Gethsemane, as he was sweating great drops of blood, he said, Father, if there's any way this cup can pass from me, let it happen. But nevertheless, not what I want, but what you want. You see, Jesus had a choice about which viewpoint of the window he was going to look through. He could look through it as I have to and I don't want to, or he could look through the idea of saying, I am going to do this. I will do this. You see, church, what our world needs today more than anything else is individuals and people that will go with an attitude and says, man, I get to do this. You see, when we seize the moments of being able to help others that aren't able to help themselves, instead of thinking, not again, we walk in a get-to spirit. We walk in a get-to spirit. You see, when we lay aside our perceived rights, man, sometimes I think if I hear one more somebody on a TV talking about their rights, I'm going to go, ah. Jesus didn't call us to be worried about our rights. He called us to lay down those rights for people around us. He called us to lay down our rights. He called us to look at it and say, man, I don't have to be involved with them. I get to be involved with them. How many of you took the time, I think some of them are still out there, on the windows on either side of the main entrance, we posted the cards, the thank you cards from the teachers and the workers over at Hugger Elementary that we were able to bless. I went out there and started to read some of them one day. I began to weep. Because here are people, here are individuals, here are men and women giving everything they've got to educate kids. And as we've said, as we were raising the funds and taking the offerings with the gift cards and different things, we know that many of those teachers spend hundreds of dollars at the beginning of the school year because they don't get any funding from the school to decorate their rooms, to get the supplies that they need. So we do this and we give, but many times I wonder how many of us say, man, we get to do this, and how many of us look through the window saying, I have to do it. Well, my church is doing it, I have to. Man, PK, that's kind of harsh. No, it's not. It's reality. It's reality, folks. And as we're looking through the windows, man, because you see, our vision can be messed up with all kinds of stuff. How many of you have got a past in here? How many? I've got 3 people. So we're going to have to check y'all out. I only got 4 or 5 people said they had a past. That's kind of odd, folks. I'm just telling you. How many of you have a past that colors the way you view your present? How many people are in bondage to a past that keep you from doing the things that God has called you to do in the future? You see, all of those things, we look at them, we said, do I have to? Do I have to? Do I have to? Do I have to? I really don't want to. I got hurt one time. Anybody in here ever been hurt before? Some of you not raising your hands, I'll see you at the altar after service, okay? We're going to pray. We come through those times and we go through those situations and we say, man, I don't know that I can do that again. I don't know if I can, because I put myself out there and so I just don't want to put myself in that place. Well, if you'll force me out, I guess I'll have to, but I really don't want to. And the reality here is once we lay aside our perceived rights and we focus on how we can be a stepping stone instead of a stumbling block, we walk in a get-to place. You know, as Christians, we got a lot of freedom. You realize that? I grew up in a church system that man, if it looked good, smelled good, tasted good, or felt good, it was sin. Serious. I'm serious. If you were a woman and you dared to walk in the church in a pair of slacks, oh my goodness, it's a wonder hellfire didn't bust out on you before you walked out the door. And if you were a guy in the church that I grew up in, you better not come in here. I look around and say, I don't see any ties in this place. Y'all was all going to hell in my church growing up. And the problem with that is that if we wanted to keep that in the building, that was cool, but we started measuring everybody else by those standards. And it put all of us in a place where we were so worried about the have-tos, we forgot about the get-tos. We were so worried about how we looked and how we acted and all those different things that, man, we just couldn't get beyond that to be able to minister to somebody that was hurting. Well, man, God forbid I should pray with somebody on the street. They got to come to our church. Need to get them into church. Come to the altar. But the reality is this. Every day that you wake up, every step you take, you have get-to moments. It doesn't matter. It can be with your kids. It can be with your spouse. It can be with your neighbors. It can be with your coworkers. It can be with a cranky dude across the street that gets mad because you mow your lawn too early in the morning, and then he gets mad because you mow your grass too late at night. I want to tell him, dude, if you knew what I've been through mowing grass, you wouldn't be saying anything to me. But when you look out the window and you see your neighbors, how do you view them? Man, I wish they'd get their kids to turn their radios off at night. Coming in all late with that radio, cranking it, all kinds of stuff. But when you begin to see, not the have to, but when you begin to see individuals and people through the lens of I get to, it is amazing what God will do. Our neighbor across the street knocked on our door the other night, and she was a cardiac care nurse at Troy Beaumont Hospital. In fact, she was part of the care team that worked with me when I had my surgery. And she came over with a very simple request, wanted to know, and I know some of you, don't you dare call me up and don't you dare send me letters, okay, or texts or anything like that. She called up and she says, I'm doing a presentation for a work thing and for an advanced degree that I'm going after. Can I use your name and your church's name as part of that? Sure, I don't care. Cool. And she says, by the way, she said, the other night, she said, you had a big group of cars over at your house. And I said, yeah. I said, once Tammy was there, I said, once a couple of times a month, we have what we call a life group. She goes, what's that? I said, well, it's just a group of people that we gather together. And I said, a lot of people in our church have them and host them. I said, we get an opportunity to have people in our house. I said, we just talk about life and we eat and we pray together and everything. And in that moment, I just dared. I saw a get to moment. And I said, Dana, you and Dean are more than welcome to join us the next time we have our thing. She goes, really? I said, yeah. She goes, I'll talk to Dean about that. And I'm hoping, we have life group tonight, I'm hoping that they show up. Because even though they got kids that come in at all kinds of times a day with their stereos blasting and all kinds of stuff going on, you know what? But that's okay. I'm out there early in the morning mowing my grass. I'm going, I'm hoping they show up. And you know what? Anytime that kind of stuff happens, it's not a have-to moment. I'm learning. It's taken me a while, but I'm learning. God, it's okay for us to be inconvenienced a little bit if we're going after and we're pursuing get-to moments in our lives. And I'm believing they're going to come over and meet the crazy folks that come to our life group, and they're going to feel like they fit in because they're just as crazy as we are. And I see that as that time where we can be able to do that. We've got to seize the moments that we need to. We've got to get a hold of those things. You see, how you view your world outside your windows will determine what you see and have a moment to get a moment. In closing this morning, I knew I wasn't going to be very long, so please do not expect this out of Pastor Richard when he gets back, okay? But a number of years ago, there was a movie that came out. The Disney movies brought it out, and it was a movie called The Rookie. How many of you saw the movie The Rookie? Okay, so you know the story of Jim Morris. Guy, he was a school teacher in high school in Texas. He had wanted to play baseball all his life, but ended up hurting his arm, hurting his shoulder, wasn't able to. So he got an education degree and was, I believe it was a math teacher in this Texas. I mean, we're talking way out in the middle of nothing. The wind couldn't blow out there, that it didn't blow up all kinds of dust and stuff. So he's out there teaching, and he's coaching the high school ball team. And so he's trying to get them to play together and everything, and through the course of it, they're winning, and they end up winning the state championship and all this kind of stuff. And through the course of this, he has an opportunity. He's called up because there's a pro scout going to be in the area, and he was invited by this pro scout to come because they knew at one time this guy was pretty good. Well, he convinces his mom or his wife that he wants to go, and she says, okay, you go do it. And he goes and he takes the kids because she's a working mom and he's got the kids. So he's hanging, with the kids, changing diapers in the middle of all these guys playing ball and doing their thing. And he gets out there and he starts pitching. And the crazy thing about it is he hasn't played in all this time. He hasn't really done a whole lot, but the guy is throwing close to 100 miles an hour, which in baseball, I know there's probably a lot more guys that do it now, but back in that time, that was something else. If you could throw a ball 100 miles an hour and not kill somebody, that was pretty good. So the scouts that were there, they came up and they talked to him and they said, look, we don't know, but we know what we saw, so we're gonna, take you and we'll talk to some teams and just see what happens. Story goes on, he gets a call from a minor league organization for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. And they ask him if they want to sign him to a contract, but he's got to start out in the minor leagues. And if you know anything about the minor leagues of baseball, it ain't all that, okay? They ride in buses. They don't get the planes. They ride in buses. They stay in flea-bitten motels. It's constant travel just for the hope of maybe one day making the big show. And finally, after all of these games and after all of this stuff, he's just kind of worn out about it because what he's done is it's become, I have to do this now. I have to. And one night after a game, he's in his room with his friend. His friend's name was Brooks. And he says, I don't think I can take this anymore. He called his wife. He said, I think I may come home tomorrow. And she said, are you sure? And he said, you guys need me. You guys need me. And his wife told him, Jim, if you're not doing this if you're not coming home because you want to, don't you dare come home. So he's caught in a conundrum. Do I stay? Even though I can't, there's no chance, he's an older guy, there's no chance I'm gonna make it up to the big leagues. And he leaves the motel room, and as he's leaving the room, he looks across the road from the motel, and it's a classic scene. There's the glow of stadium lights off beyond the road and through some woods. So he decides, he crosses the road, goes through the woods, and he gets there, and the lights are on a field, and it's little league players playing ball. And those kids are having a blast. And in that moment, something comes back to him, and he says, you know what? I don't want to go home. I want to stay. So he turns around and he walks back and gets to the motel, and his friend Brooks is there. He says, man, Jim, are you okay? And he says, Brooks, do you know what we get to do tomorrow? Notice, before he walked over, he had to do it. Now he's come back and he says, you know what we get to do? And he says, what? He says, Brooks, we get to play baseball. Powerful moment in that film. He plays another game. They call him up to the big leagues. In the very first game that he's in uniform, sitting there, doesn't think he's ever going to get in the game because he's just some podunk old man rookie and everything. Into the game, they've got the lead, and they need somebody that can come in and shut out and win the game for them. They call his name, and he comes back, and so he goes into the game. Throws 3 pitches, 3 strikes, strikes the guy out. They win the game, and everybody's going nuts. But you see, the backstory to this whole film isn't about his relationship to baseball. It's the relationship with his dad. His dad had always told him, give up baseball, you can't make money, you can't make a living, you got to support a family, you need to give it up and all this. And they were totally estranged from each other. And on the night that they were playing, it just so happened that ball game, the Tampa Bay Devil Rays were playing in Texas that night. And so this little town out in the middle of nowhere, Texas, they load up buses and bring the whole town out to watch him. They're going nuts up in the stands and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the game, the reporter is interviewing him. He says, well, what pitches did you throw? He said, well, fastball, fastball, fastball. And the guy says, that's awesome. What a great story. And up to this point, Jim Morris only saw his dad as a have to. I have to deal with him. I don't like my dad. I don't want to be around him because of just all the different things that had gone on in their lives, right? He turns around from the reporter and looks, and there's his dad standing there. And he walks over and he says, Dad, what are you doing here? He said, son, did you really think I was going to let my son be in his first major league game and I wasn't going to be there to see it? And Jim Morris looked at it, and in that moment, it went from a have to a get to. And he took the game ball and he gave it to his dad. And his dad says, what's this? He said, it's the game ball. You see, we live in a life and in a world that is filled with all kinds of junk. And it gets so easy to get preoccupied with our own stuff, right? Our own lives, our own families, our own finances, and all that kind of stuff. But every day, the Lord places before us opportunities. And we have the choice to either make them a get-to moment or a have-to moment. It's all in how you view it. It's all in how you view it. Windows, what do you see when you look out yours? What do you see when you look out your windows this morning? Do you see I have to? I know I'm weird. I look outside and I see my grass and I go, I get to mow the lawn. The other thing I'm nutso about is shoveling my driveway. No, I'm not coming to shovel yours. But to me, there's something no better being up I'm an early riser anyway, being up at 5 o'clock in the morning, going out and shoveling the driveway, and the only sound you hear is lightly falling snow and the scrape of the shovel. And the reason I have such a I don't know, I'm weird, a love for that and getting out and doing that is that when I had my heart surgery, I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to shovel the driveway again. I didn't know. When I went to the doctor after all the post-op and after the number of weeks and all that kind of stuff, and he said, okay, he said, you can start taking it easy. It was, I don't know, it may have been a day or two. It snowed. And I got up and I started putting on my stuff. And Tammy says, what are you doing? She thinks I'm a lunatic. That day she knew I was. I said, I'm going out to shovel the driveway. Kelvin, are you crazy? Probably. Wouldn't be the first time someone's accused me of that. And I got outside, and in the crisp, cold air, for the first time in weeks, I didn't see it as having to. I saw it as, man, I get to do this. And I was shoveling the snow. Tammy kept coming there, are you okay? Yeah, baby, I'm fine. And I got so happy, I got excited. I shoveled my driveway, and I went across the street and I shoveled my buddy's driveway as well. Because it no longer was a have to, it was a get to. And church, if you'll ask the Lord, He will present you with get to moments. He will present that to you and He'll say, here you go. And it's up to you how you're going to view it through the windows of your life. Amen. Let's bow your heads this morning, if you would, please.